What's up, you guys? I'm Dan, this is Frugal Not Cheap, and today we'll look at health insurance options for foreigners living in Thailand. When people think about moving abroad for an improved quality of life or cost of living, they don't always look at all the different details and things that need to be taken care of in order to make that possible. One of those, of course, is a visa, some kind of way to stay in the country for an extended period of time. And I covered the visa that I got so that I could live in Thailand in a recent video. This was the Thailand Privileged Platinum Card, which will allow me to stay in the Kingdom of Thailand for a period of 10 years. And actually, I'll be moving there in just a few weeks. Another one of the major things that people don't always think about is health insurance. For health insurance in Thailand, there are of course a number of options. If you're there for work or something like that, then you probably already have some options that kind of come along with that. But for someone like me that's on the path to FIRE, I haven't fully retired yet, I am still working part-time. But as I'm working part-time, my employer is not covering my health insurance out in Thailand. So options for someone like me include domestic Thai insurance firms like Pacific Cross or Muang Thai. Actually, there was an offer from Muang Thai that was included in my Thailand privilege thing that had some kind of a discount that could be had. Or you might look at foreign companies like AXA, Allianz, William Russell, Cigna, Aetna. Sorry, not Aetna. I was actually thinking of Anthem, which was my insurer in the US, and they do have a relatively expensive but very comprehensive plan called Geo Blue. And then of course the other consideration is if you're going to get coverage just in Thailand or if you want some kind of a global worldwide plan. In many cases though, these global plans are going to exclude the United States of America because US healthcare is just ridiculously expensive. And in general, I think it's most likely the case that a domestic Thai firm that offers a limited area of coverage, say just in Thailand for the most part, is of course going to be the least expensive option. And then in terms, of course, of the amount of coverage that you have, that's going to drastically change the policy premiums as well. There are some extremely limited coverage options that provide just enough to meet visa requirements. I won't be looking at those today. I'm looking at the actual health insurance a person might want to have when living in Thailand, not one of those that's just to satisfy, kind of a checkbox on the visa requirements. So for instance, I did receive a quote for the Maxima plan from Pacific Cross. This is a Thailand-based plan. There is a little bit of coverage abroad, up to 90 days per year. The annual policy limit is 5 million Thai baht, and I will be doing everything in Thai baht just to make it comparable and to make sense for someone that's living in Thailand. It covers room and board while you're hospitalized at up to 8,000 baht per day, which isn't huge, but the annual premium is relatively low at just over 40,000 baht, 40,763 baht. However, in order to remain eligible for continued renewal of the policy, you do need to live in Thailand for at least 6 months of the year. This also means, of course, that you are a Thai tax resident if you're in Thailand for over 6 months of the year. But then, as we mentioned before, coverage outside of Thailand is limited to 90 days. So basically, you're going to have to be in Thailand for 3/4 of the year on this plan anyway. And I opted against this as I wanted to maintain flexibility to move to different countries in case something like the Thai tax regime or other policy changes happened, which I viewed adversely and would mean I'd want to move somewhere else. Another consideration, and I don't know, what the ins and outs of all this are and how it actually shakes out, but it is that, of course, domestic Thai firms are regulated by the Thai governing bodies, whereas the international firms are going to be regulated by whatever bodies they fall under. So I did look at a slightly more expensive quote from Healthcare International. It's called their Emergency Plus plan, and it provides worldwide coverage excluding the US and minor outlying islands. You do get 60 days of out-of-area cover, so less than the 90 that we saw with Pacific Cross, but you have a much higher annual limit of over 16 million baht. You get a private room, and the increase in premium isn't terrible, as you're now at just over 54,000 baht. Mostly though in my search, I was interested in looking at some of the really big name insurers. One of the reasons again is because I wanted them to be highly regulated. And then the other big reason was basically longevity risk for the underwriter or the firm that I'm working with. So if you're young and you don't have any sort of persistent long-term conditions, then you might have never really thought about this. And you could theoretically be moving from one health insurer to another in order to chase kind of a good value. As over time, if you tend to stay with an insurer, it can, they know you're not moving, and so they kind of can jack up your premiums over time a little bit. depending on the insurer, of course. Everyone is a little bit different. I heard some good things, for instance, about a company called Genki, where any year that you don't have a claim, then your policy premium gets discounted for the next year. But anyway, for me, the major consideration here are pre-existing conditions. So, love it, hate it, whatever you think about the Affordable Care Act in the United States, also known as Obamacare. What this act did is ensure that all insurers do have to cover pre-existing conditions. And so you're not then locked in with a particular insurer, and you can move between insurers. And this does actually increase competition among among insurers for that pool. And of course, if you're, an American living in the US, then you have a tremendous peace of mind regarding those pre-existing conditions as well. However, for these international plans, this is not the case. So these companies will screen and they will not cover pre-existing conditions, or if they do cover them, there might be some adjustment to the premiums or this kind of thing, or they might just exclude that condition but still provide you with overall coverage, etc., etc. But they are not required to cover these pre-existing conditions. And so this is a major consideration. So imagine that you're working with, some really budget insurance company that in actuality doesn't work out all that well when you go to make claims, but then it turns out that, you have a, new condition that's propped up, and this is a chronic or a long-term condition that's not going to go anytime soon. Well, now you're kind of stuck with them because if you move to another insurer, they're not going to cover that condition. With that in mind, one of the quotes I got was from Allianz. I looked at their Care Core plan and then the Care Plus plan as well. One of the major differences between the two is whether you get a semi-private or a private hospital room. The base care plan does not have a private hospital room, it's semi-private. They're both covering, of course, worldwide, excluding the USA, with up to 42 days of outside of area coverage and very high annual limits. For the base plan, it's 81,750,000 baht. And then for the Care Plus plan, it's even higher than that. I haven't done the math. And the annual premiums here are higher at 66,000 baht. In the end, though, I went for one of the big names that's often promoted as kind of one of the best expat insurance options, and that is Cigna Global. I did have to add in a $1,500 deductible in order to get the annual policy premium below $2,000, so that puts me right at 65,000 baht per year. But again, it is a very established firm that is regulated by the Guernsey Financial Services Commission. The premiums will, of course, go up as I age, but I do think it is a very good insurer to be with for the long term. Now, I do want to point out here that, of course, we've done a really cursory overview of these plans. Is really just looking at, are they domestic, are they foreign, what's the area of coverage, how much is the policy premium, and what is the annual policy limit. But of course, there's a ton of details to all of these different plans that you'll want to dig into and compare when you do your own, kind of shopping around and looking at different quotes. Now, this level of detail and all that might be a place where you'd say, hey, maybe we could use some expertise like a broker. And so I did in fact reach out to a broker initially, but in fact all they really did was what I could have done myself, which is kind of shop around and look at the different quotes. And unfortunately it seemed to me that the broker I was working with, well, it looked like they got kind of some financial incentives to suggest certain products over others. So it looked like, there's a particular insurer that they wanted to push for me because they probably got the best commissions or kickbacks or whatever from that particular insurer. I also noticed that anytime that there was a place to add additional options that would be costly that I might not want, like there was something about whole life and some other stuff, that they were adding those on, and that I found that distasteful. But really the worst part is I had asked them about Cigna Global, and they told me, oh no, Cigna Global is very, very expensive. And then they gave me this comparison, but the sneaky thing they did was for Cigna Global, which they did not do for the other quotes they were comparing to, they added this really expensive medical evacuation thing for like hostage situations or hostile zones or whatever. So it's an expensive option that you're probably not going to add on, and it made Cigna look relatively expensive, but if you take that off, of course, things look much better for Cigna. So that was the main thing that turned me off from continuing to work with this broker, and I just went on my own and, talked to a Cigna rep and got the policy with them, and it was a very smooth process, and I'm very happy generally with the level of service that I've received, certainly from the salespeople at Cigna, and then I have this assigned guy who's going to be my point of contact, and he seems fine, whatever, just got an email from him, it was friendly and all. I sent one response, asked a question, the response I got back was not as warm and fuzzy as I would have liked, but whatever, it's not a big deal. So that was my thinking and my process for choosing health insurance for Thailand. And again, because it is a global policy, excluding the United States, of course, I have a ton of flexibility to move around and continue to have this coverage. And then, I know that it's a good place to be with for the long term. So yeah, I'm not going to be jumping ship anytime soon. Are there any other major considerations that I missed? Do let us know in the comments below. Also, if you have experience getting this kind of insurance and you have something to share that could be helpful, do please put that in the comments as well. Hope you found today's video helpful. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.